Everyone at the dinner table went silent when the billionaire's wife insulted his old mother, but his silent response, it broke the entire internet. Rain hammers against the windows of a mansion dining room, the kind of rain that drowns out everything else. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast golden light across polished marble floors. But the warmth stops there. At a long mahogany table covered in silver and expensive china, 3 people sit in suffocating silence. An elderly woman in a faded cotton dress stares down at her plate. Her hands, weathered and calloused, tremble slightly as she reaches for a glass of water. Across from her, a woman in designer silk leans back in her chair, eyes cold, lips pressed into a thin line of disgust. And at the head of the table, a man in his 30s watches them both. His jaw is tight. His eyes are unreadable. The old woman sets down her fork. Her voice is barely a whisper. I am sorry. I didn't know this seat was only for rich people. The younger woman doesn't hesitate. Her voice cuts through the room like glass shattering. Then maybe you shouldn't be here. The old woman flinches. The man's knuckles turn white as he grips the edge of the table. But he says nothing. If you think insulting a poor old mother is unforgivable, wait until you see how her billionaire son responds. His silence tonight shocks an entire country. And what happens next will change everything. Before we begin this story, can I ask for a small favor? This story took days to create. Every line written with heart, every scene edited with care, every emotion crafted to touch your soul. It costs you nothing to support me, but your support means everything. So please take a second to like this video, subscribe if you haven't yet. Check the video description to grab a copy of my ebooks to support my channel and comment your location below. I'd love to know where in the world my amazing viewers are watching from. I read every single comment and I'll be giving heartfelt shoutouts in the next video. Michael is 32 years old, self-made billionaire, tech empire built from scratch. But before the wealth, before the mansions and private jets, there was only a boy and his mother. Her name is Mama Tola, 71 years old now, widow at 28, left with a 6-year-old son and nothing but her bare hands. She sold vegetables in the market under the scorching sun. She cleaned floors in carpentry shops. She carried loads on her head that would break most men. Also, that boy could go to school. Also, he could dream bigger than the broken down shack they called home. Michael remembers every sacrifice. Every morning she left before dawn. Every night she came home with swollen feet and empty pockets, still smiling, still telling him he could be anything, and he became everything she dreamed of. But then came Amanda, beautiful, sophisticated, draped in luxury, like it was her birthright. She came from money, married into more, and wore her status like armor. She loved Michael's success. She loved his empire. She loved the life he built. But she hated where he came from. She never said it directly at first. Just small comments, subtle looks. She avoided family gatherings, made excuses when Mama Tola called. And when the old woman did visit, Amanda suddenly had appointments, urgent meetings, reasons to be anywhere else. Michael noticed. Of course he noticed. But he loved his wife. And he wanted to believe she would change. So he kept inviting his mother over, hoping that time would soften Amanda's heart. Tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight was supposed to be a fresh start. But some hearts aren't meant to soften. The dining room had been prepared like always. Expensive wine, imported delicacies, everything perfect, everything pristine. Michael personally set a place for his mother at the main table, right next to where he would sit. Mama Tola arrived early, nervous. She wore her best dress, the one she saved for church. It was clean but old, patched in places. She carried a small gift, homemade pastries wrapped in brown paper, the kind she used to make when Michael was young. He hugged her tight at the door, kissed her forehead, led her to the dining room, and pulled out her chair himself. "Sit here, Mama, right here." She smiled, tears in her eyes. "You don't have to do all this for me." "I do," he whispered. "You deserve this, and more." She sat, looked around at the grandeur, and felt small. But she was here because her son wanted her here, and that was enough. Then Amanda arrived. She swept into the room an hour late, dripping in jewelry, perfume trailing behind her like a warning. Her eyes scanned the table and stopped cold when they landed on Mama Tola, the old woman sitting in her seat. Amanda's expression hardened. She didn't greet anyone, didn't smile, just stood there, radiating contempt. Michael stood. "Amanda, you're here. Please, sit." She ignored him, her gaze locked on Mama Tola. "This is not a village gathering. We have rules here." The air turned to ice. Mama Tola's face flushed. She started to rise. "I can move. It's not about the seat," Amanda interrupted, voice sharp. "It's about respect. For the space. For the standards we maintain." She wrinkled her nose slightly. "I can smell old clothes from here. This is supposed to be a dignified home." Michael's entire body went rigid. His fists clenched at his sides. Every muscle screamed to react, to defend, to roar. But he remained silent. Mama Tola stood slowly, trembling. She gathered her small gift, clutching it to her chest like a shield. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to cause trouble. I should go." Michael's throat tightened. A single tear slid down his cheek, but his face remained stone. He watched his mother apologize for existing, watched her shrink under the weight of cruelty, and still, he said nothing. Amanda sat down in the chair Mama Tola had abandoned, smoothing her dress, satisfied. She reached for her wine glass like nothing had happened. Mama Tola walked towards the door, slowly, each step heavier than the last. If you hate seeing the rich look down on the poor, if you believe every mother deserves respect no matter what, comment, "Respect all mothers" below. Let the world know where you stand. The door closed softly behind her. Michael stood frozen in place, staring at the empty doorway. Amanda sipped her wine and started talking about her day, about some charity event she was planning, about new furniture she wanted to order. He didn't hear a word. All he could see was his mother's face. The humiliation, the shame, the quiet acceptance of disrespect from the woman who had given everything so he could have anything. That night, Michael didn't sleep. He lay in bed next to Amanda, staring at the ceiling. She fell asleep quickly, peacefully, unburdened by what she'd done. But Michael replayed every second, every word, every look. Around 3 in the morning, Amanda stirred. She rolled over, saw he was awake. "What's wrong?" His voice came out flat, empty. "My mother left in tears tonight." Amanda sighed, annoyed. "Michael, don't be dramatic," She's fine. She just doesn't understand our world. Your mother embarrasses me. She doesn't belong in spaces like this. We have an image to protect. He turned his head to look at her. Really look at her. An image. Yes, an image. Do you know what people think when they see someone like that at our table? It reflects on us, on you. Michael's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm, disturbingly calm. I understand. Amanda smiled, relieved. She kissed his cheek and went back to sleep. But Michael's heart shattered in the silence. He understood, all right. He understood perfectly. Because in that moment, he realized that Amanda had never loved him. She loved what he represented, the status, the wealth, the image. But the man who came from nothing, the boy raised by calloused hands and unconditional love, that man disgusted her. And his silence wasn't tolerance, it was a strategy. If you stand for justice, if you believe that respect should never depend on a bank account, don't scroll past this. Hit that like button. It helps this story reach more people who need to hear it. And check the video description to grab my ebooks. Your support keeps this channel alive and lets me bring you more stories like this. The next morning, Michael woke Amanda before sunrise. His voice was soft, almost tender. Get ready, we're going somewhere. She groaned. Where? It's barely done. It's important. Please. Something in his tone made her obey. She dressed quickly, confused, still half asleep. He didn't explain, just led her to the car and started driving. They left the gated estates behind, left the clean streets and manicured lawns. The city changed around them. Buildings grew smaller, streets narrower, paint peeled from walls, laundry hung between windows. Amanda shifted uncomfortably. Where are we going? Michael didn't answer. He pulled up to a crowded market, the kind that opens before dawn. Vendors calling out prices, the smell of fried dough and dried fish mixing with diesel fumes and sweat. He parked and got out. Amanda hesitated, then followed. Michael walked through the market like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Because he had. This was his childhood. He stopped at a vegetable store, an old wooden table stacked with tomatoes and peppers. The woman running it recognized him immediately. Her face lit up. Michael, is that you? And with such a fine woman. He smiled, a real smile, for the first time in days. This is where my mother worked. Right here, 15 years, 7 days a week, rain or sun. She carried produce on her head from the trucks, set up before anyone else arrived, bargained until her voice went hoarse. Amanda's face paled. He moved on, led her deeper into the maze of stalls, stopped at a small carpentry shop with sawdust covering every surface. She cleaned floors here at night. After the market closed, she'd scrub, grease, and wood shavings until midnight, then walk home, 2 hours, because we couldn't afford the bus. Amanda's hands trembled. Michael, we're not done. He walked her to a dusty roadside under a crooked tree. A few women sat there now, selling oranges from buckets. She sat here during lunch breaks, sold fruit to make extra money, pennies at a time, so I could buy textbooks, so I could afford the exam fees that would get me into university. Tears streamed down Amanda's face now, silent, ashamed. But Michael wasn't finished. He drove her to the edge of the neighborhood, pulled up in front of a tiny structure, barely a house. Rusted metal roof, cracked walls, one room visible through a broken window. He got out, walked to the door. Amanda followed, sobbing openly now. This is where we lived, where I grew up, where my mother sang to me when I was scared, where she held me when I cried because other kids made fun of my torn shoes, where she promised me that one day everything would be different. He turned to face Amanda. His eyes burned with quiet fire. Everything you enjoy today, every luxury you take for granted, came from these hands you insulted yesterday. My mother's hands. Hands that bled. Hands that broke. Hands that never stopped working. Amanda collapsed against the car, sobbing uncontrollably. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. His voice was still wrapped in silk. You looked at her and saw poverty. Shame. Something to hide. You saw the smell of old clothes. I saw the woman who gave up everything so I could become someone. He stepped closer. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. My silence last night was not weakness, Amanda. I wanted you to see her. Really see her. The woman you disrespected. The woman whose sacrifices you mocked. Amanda sank to her knees in the dirt. Please forgive me. Michael looked down at her, not with hatred, not with satisfaction, just with sadness. That's not for me to decide. 3 days later, Michael made a decision. He sent out invitations, personal ones, to his entire company staff, to family friends, to business partners, to people who had watched him build his empire from nothing. A dinner at the mansion, formal attire. Everyone came. The dining room filled with curious faces. Whispers of excitement. What was the occasion? But when they arrived, something was different. At the head of the table, in the finest chair, draped in soft light, sat Mama Tola. She wore a new dress, simple but elegant. Her grey hair was styled. Her hands folded in her lap. She looked nervous, but Michael stood beside her, one hand on her shoulder. Amanda entered the room and froze. She had expected to sit beside her husband, to play the gracious hostess, to maintain the image. But Michael stopped her with a raised hand. His voice carried across the room. Calm, clear, unshakable. Before we begin, I want everyone here to meet someone. This is my mother, Mama Tola, the woman who raised me, the woman who sacrificed everything so I could stand here today, the woman who taught me that wealth means nothing without character. The room erupted in applause. Warm, genuine. Amanda stood frozen, humiliated, exposed. Michael continued. Respect is the first requirement in this home, in this life. If you cannot honor the woman who gave me everything, if you cannot see value in someone because of where they came from, then you have no place beside me. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones emerged from pockets. Cameras turned on. Amanda's face crumbled. She rushed forward, dropped to her knees in front of Mama Tola. I'm sorry, she choked out. I'm so deeply sorry. I was wrong. I was cruel. I judged you for things that make you a hero. Please forgive me. Mama Tola looked at her, silent for a long moment. Then she reached out, placed a gentle hand on Amanda's head. Child, forgiveness is free, but respect must be earned. Stand up and prove you mean these words. The room held its breath. Amanda stood, tears streaming. She looked at Michael. He didn't reach for her, didn't comfort her. If you want to remain in this family, he said quietly, you will attend therapy. You will volunteer at shelters that help elderly women. You will serve dinner to my mother once a week with your own hands. You will donate a portion of your allowance to organizations that support struggling mothers. And you will learn what humility means. Amanda nodded frantically. Yes, anything. I'll do anything. Michael turned to his mother, kissed her forehead, whispered something only she could hear. She smiled, nodded. The dinner proceeded. But the damage was done, or rather, the healing had begun. By morning, the moment had gone viral. Videos, screenshots, millions of views, comments flooding in. This is what real power looks like. He defended his mother without raising his voice. Silent strength is the loudest statement. The world had seen Michael's response, and the world would never forget. Weeks passed, then months. Amanda changed. Slowly, painfully. She attended therapy twice a week. She volunteered at a shelter for elderly women, listening to their stories, serving meals, folding donated clothes. She sat with Mama Tola every Sunday evening, learning to cook the dishes from Michael's childhood, learning the stories behind each recipe, learning what sacrifice really means. Some said the change was genuine. That shame had cracked her open and revealed something redeemable underneath. Others said she was just protecting her lifestyle, playing the part to stay in the mansion. Michael didn't know which version was true. Maybe both, maybe neither. But he watched. He waited. He gave her the chance his mother had given him countless times. The chance to become better. Mama Tola moved into a guest house on the property, close enough to visit daily, far enough to have her own peace. She planted a small garden, tomatoes, peppers, the vegetables she once sold in the market, now grown for joy instead of survival. And sometimes, late at night, Michael would sit with her on the porch, and she would hold his hand, and they would watch the stars together in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that says everything. Power isn't always loud. It doesn't always roar. Sometimes the strongest response is silence followed by action. Sometimes justice comes not through revenge, but through revelation. Sometimes the greatest way to defend someone you love is to show the world exactly who they are and exactly what they mean. Michael's silence that night wasn't weakness. It was wisdom. He didn't need to shout, didn't need to fight. He simply waited. And when the moment came, he showed rather than told. He led rather than lectured. He changed a heart by exposing it to truth. And maybe that's the lesson here. That real strength doesn't need to prove itself. Real love doesn't need permission to exist. And real respect begins the moment you recognize that someone's worth has nothing to do with their bank account and everything to do with the content of their character. Mama Tola raised a billionaire. But more importantly, she raised a man who never forgot where he came from. A man who understood that the hands that lifted him up were more valuable than any fortune he could ever build. And in the end, that's the only currency that really matters. What would you have done if you were in Michael's shoes? Would you have stayed silent, or would you have confronted the disrespect immediately? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe. There are more powerful stories coming your way. Stories that challenge, inspire, and remind us what really matters. And one more thing, check the description below to purchase a copy of my eBooks. Your support keeps this channel alive and helps me continue bringing you content that matters. Because at the end of the day, we're all just trying to honor the people who made us who we are. And sometimes, the greatest tribute we can give them is to never let the world forget their worth.